This is Epic Challenge, where we discuss, debate, and dedicate 20 minutes each week to a hot topic in the world of Warhammer. If you give a damn about tabletop gaming, then this is the show for you. Now, here are your hosts, Kicker and Nikki D.
Everybody, welcome to this week's Epic Challenge, a show that challenges your ideas on Warhammer so we can discover the Imperial truth, the heresy of chaos, and the obscurity of the Xenos. Kicker, we're back for another week. How are you, my friend?
I am doing great. My wife wants to run a race, and she wants to run it very fast, so she has me doing speed workout, which is exhausting. But when you run, my mind tends to like wander, and I was wondering, where the hell does the term Warhammer come from? Like, this is the name of the game system that we've invested much of our lives in.
You know?
Like, do you know? I mean, we know what a Warhammer is, but like, why did they name this game system that we love so much?
So
Do you know? Do you know?
I'm fairly confident that it comes from Warhammer Fantasy, where like the Karl Maraz, I think it is from the Empire.
Yeah,
His weapon of choice was the
it was a
Warhammer,
Warhammer. There we go.
that was like the art that was used in prior
Oh,
editions,
okay.
and then I'm pretty sure it spun off from there.
Guys,
I'm
hit us up
pretty
on our
sure.
Facebook group. Tell us if you can verify Nick's theory, because I want to know. I need to know.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. Nick, we have a friend of yours. Dare I say close friend of yours coming
Yeah.
on? All right,
Yeah,
sweet.
absolutely. Yeah, we this is what the greatest thing, Kicker. You talked about Warhammer last week about being about like it's like speed dating.
Yeah.
This was not someone I met playing a game versus them, although I will have to have that pleasure with them at some point. But someone I met actually through a couple different tournaments and through some of the teams that I know, and we very quickly hit it off. So, Kicker,
Okay.
let's go ahead and get into our introduction with our guest.
All right, our guest today is John O'Regan. He is a member of the X4 team based out of Central North Carolina. And guess what? X4 is coming to the big team event in the Challengers. I gotta say it, man. They're coming. That event has gotten past 70 teams now, which is insane. And X4 is one of them. He's a champion of Imperial Knights and relevant to today's discussion because he's also an experienced and, dare I say, certified Magic the Gathering judge. I don't even know what certified judge means, but I want to hear about it. John, come in here. Let's talk.
Hey, Kicker, I'm happy to tell you all about what it is to be a certified Magic the Gathering judge. But
Yeah.
for those who don't know me, and I'm not as big as some of the other names you've had on this podcast, my name is John O'Regan. I'm a recent addition to the 40K community in the last couple of years, but I've been an avid Magic the Gathering fan since 2011 when I was a wee baby high schooler. And to answer the question about the Warhammer, I do think it's Karl Franz from
Oh,
the
there we
old
go.
world
Karl
with his
Franz.
Thank you.
Warhammer Galmaraz.
Oh,
That's-
man, this guy knows his stuff. What?
I
got-
played some total Warhammer in my days, and I knew where that came from.
I combined the name of the hammer and the character there.
There we
That's
go, there we
what.
go. That's
Okay.
cool. That's cool. Well, thank you. Now we're all enlightened. I really appreciate that. But so you cut your teeth, playing Magic, and then you eventually became a 40K player. That's kind of the journey,
Yeah.
the hero's journey here. All right, sweet.
Yeah, and they offered like kind of different options, and especially during COVID where you couldn't play Magic in person, it was a hard hobby to interact with. And one
Yeah.
of our close friends, Frank, introduced me to Warhammer and the idea of painting minis as a way to do something new for my own solo hobbying. And better for my life and worse for my wallet. Here we are now.
that is a tagline, man. I love it. So just because I want to get this out right now, because I'm genuinely very curious. Who certifies the Magic judges? Like, how did you get that street credential? I guess, like, where does that resume line item come from?
So it kind of, to give you kind of a history on this, for the longest time up and through actually during COVID, there was an organization called the DCI, the Duelist Convocation International. Essentially, it was the overriding player sanctioning body for competitive play for Magic the Gathering. It was sanctioned by Wizards of the Coast. So when you registered for an event, you had your DCI number, all your points towards the Pro Tour went there. And as part of that program, they ran a set of judge certifications, level 1, level 2, level 3, up to what kind of events you can judge.
Oh, wow.
So that was the group that worked with Wizards of the Coast for writing new rules. Every set introduces a new mechanic, and so you have to find ways to work that within the comprehensive rules guide.
Cool.
And so they created the original judge tests and judge programs. Sometimes it involved sitting down doing mentoring with judges. You had to read and take a bunch of courses. And then you had to take a legitimately very hard exam.
Oh,
And I'm a chemical engineer by schooling, and that exam was worse than some of my thermodynamics exams.
Worse than organic chemistry, John.
Okay.
Oh, Orgo is nothing compared to thermodynamics, man. Thermo was 6 hours with a textbook, 10 to 2. You're like, I don't know if I got any of these right, but there's a lot of math on this paper.
Oh my gosh. Well, we are obviously going to have to do a deep dive into this in our main segment because I think this is going to be very relevant for our topic tonight.
I think so, yes.
But as is tradition, before we get into the meat and potatoes, we got to talk about our week in Warhammer. It keeps us all accountable. I got to tell you guys, I've not been getting as much hobbying in terms of painting, but I have been playing, and I got obliterated by a Necron player last night. I was running mainly vehicle. He was running mainly vehicles, and I was running mainly Kroot that just don't like vehicles. Hitting a tank with a stick is just not going to do much. But my love for Vespid continues. The bugs did 12 wounds to none other than the Silent King, who then proceeded to explode in the middle of my army, doing over 30 mortal wounds to my army. so yeah, that was a big ouchie. But the point is that my bugs, I like my Vespid more and more and more. Nick, what about you? You've had some time to rest, recuperate a little bit?
Kicker, first of all, I'll note that sometimes hitting tanks with sticks does work out well. See Return of the Jedi.
I was going to make the same comment. I was thinking about the Ewoks there.
You might need some terrain features or some rocks to throw.
Yeah.
But a little bit behind the curtain, if you will, on the recording of the show, because it is a pre-recorded show. Sometimes time is a little wonky. And since the last time that we recorded, the only thing I've been able to do is put away my army from the battle to end Alzheimer's. So that has been the entirety of my hobby progress. However, I am committed to, as I said on last week's episode, my Death Guard painting. I'm still really interested in getting Death Guard painted because, again, we know sometime that their codex is coming, and I do love my Death Guard army, but I have all my Blood Angels painted that I need to have painted, so I'm continuing to play my Blood Angels, but on the hobby side, it's getting Death Guard ready so that I can play whatever might be good when that codex comes out. That's going to be so. That's it. But that's it for me. John, how about for you? What have you been doing on the Warhammer front?
So as introduced at the top, I do love my Imperial Knights over here, but I have swapped them out with the hobby desk for the last couple of weeks with tiny little elves. I've been painting Eldar, which is a very different army for me to play. Very different style. I all of a sudden have like 15 things on a board, not 4. I have to actually think a lot harder about movement. So I played a game of that last weekend, and I have painted 5 more Fire Dragons, which for me is a very fast painting progress for a week.
Oh,
There
nice,
you go.
man. Yeah, well done, well done.
That's
Nick,
excellent.
why don't you take us into our show rules, just so that John knows what's up, and also newer listeners have an idea what's going on.
Absolutely. Well, this is the part where we now welcome you to Epic Challenge, where we're discussing the hottest topics in Warhammer. One of our hosts is going to be presenting a topic of debate relevant to Warhammer, the community, and our hobby. Our guest today, that is obviously John. John's going to be providing their informed, educated, or maybe just passionate view on this topic and to help them understand it from a different perspective. One of our other hosts, and tonight that's going to be me, is going to be providing perhaps a different point of view or a different contention when it comes to this idea. And we're going to figure out which one of us is right, or if both of us are right on this topic, into what makes Warhammer a great game, what we can do to improve the game of Warhammer, and what we're doing with the Warhammer community. So, Kicker, tonight you're the host. And with that, I will put on my Imperial Commissar hat. Let's move, and let's get tonight's show rolling.
All right, guys, this is going to be a fun topic. Judging norms and protocols are completely different from game system to game system. You look at X-Wing, compare that to Kill Team, to Old World. They all can be handled very differently. Just judges have different norms and also, requirements to follow in each game system. And then there's the card games. We're talking basically Magic, right? That's the ever-present game system that lives in every game store and is just extremely popular. And they have, what John was alluding to, a very established, I guess, judge program. So let's discuss the different practices between Magic, that's long running and let's be honest, way bigger than 40K, and what's happening in 40K, and maybe we can see what best practices we can port over. Let's go right into question number 1. This is going to go right to John first. Calling a judge or getting a judge call can have very different perception, right? For some people, for better or worse, calling a judge in 40K still often has a negative, vibe to a negative perception. What should be, the perception of, or maybe the purpose of a judge, being called in an event? How should we view judges? What is the best way to view a judge? Let's look at it that way.
I think the best way I think to kind of start off, I want to describe 2 different levels of which you judge events in Magic. You have what's called a comp REL, or competitive rules enforcement level, or you have sort of casual REL, or what I call like REL laxed.
Yeah.
And the idea behind the competitive one is that's where you're evaluating the game state, the board state. Any mistake will go in through infractions. But most events for Magic are held at sort of a casual level. Your Friday Night Magics
Yeah.
or your pre-release events, any sort of commander nights, if there's a judge, are going to have this sort of more relaxed approach to we're looking for clarification, we're looking to understand if there's a mistake that we made, we're going to turn into teaching opportunities. So in that case, judging is often viewed more of a teaching and informative event. I'm going to give a good example as I judge some pre-releases. Pre-release, for those who don't know,
Yeah.
is Magic
Educate us.
releases.
Educate
Yeah, I
us.
realize I'm gonna go through all this, so don't worry about it. But about every 2 months or so, Magic the Gathering releases a new set visiting a new sort of plane or universe. And during the pre-release, it's the first time players get to actually get a hold of the cards. You'll essentially be opening up a kit that has 6 packs and building a deck out of that. But it's the first time most people have seen these cards and played with them. It's often where the new mechanics and new rules come in. So it's like imagine if every color gets its own. Magic has 5 colors, and each one gets its own different detachment rule every set.
Oh wow.
There's a
So
lot
is it a
going on.
set calendar? I'm just curious. Is there always a calendar like everyone knows way in advance? These are the dates that this drops.
More or less, they'll
Yeah.
sometimes hint that this is going to be a Q3 or
Okay.
Q4. So, for example, I think in Q1 of next year we have an Avatar: The Last Airbender set coming out.
Okay.
We just
But it's
visited the
not
plane.
like this day of this month because that would help an organizer such as myself or even players. Okay, get ready. Things are going to change real fast, real soon.
Yeah, and like they will have that as you get it closer to the event. Well, hey, we know on this date is the pre-release, and then following week is the release where big box stores like Target and
Yeah.
Amazon can then sell products. So basically, your LGSs have a chance to sell things before the big box
Cool.
stores do. So it helps bring players in. But at these events, even if you've read all the cards, you know all the rules, sometimes weird things come up, and a lot of times you'll have players, hey, this happens, we don't know what happens, or hey, I got this card and this is on the board, what's going on? Or you've a lot of new players who are playing in their first event before, and they say, I accidentally drew 2 cards instead of 1 on my turn. What should I do here? And it becomes a teaching moment. And I think that's something when you sometimes call Judge in 40K, it's you're looking for a ruling in your favor, not in your favor, not necessarily looking to understand the rules interaction, or someone in that interaction between you and your opponent has that misunderstanding. Now, I will say when you go to competitive rules level enforcement, which is something that is, I think, probably more relevant when you look at the 40K side, you're looking for people who have not followed the rules deliberately or have
Yeah.
made mistakes within the rules. And I think within the 40K community, that feels more of a gotcha moment if I'm trying to get my opponent, which also is a feel bad if you're the one on the receiving end of that. So I think that's why you can sometimes have a hesitancy to call a judge.
Yeah. Interesting. What about you, Nick? What do you think the general? First of all, like, what's the vibe when you call a judge? Is it seems kind of almost negative sometimes, right? And how should we view judges in general?
Yeah, when I got into this hobby, Warhammer 40K anyways, at least the 40K side of things, it's around 2015 or so, but then I didn't really start going to events until 2018 or 2019. And it was definitely that expectation where like calling a judge is a no-no, right? And this is again now 6, 7 years ago, but it was that idea where like if you're calling a judge, it's because either you don't know the rules or you don't think your opponent knows the rules, or they're trying to pull a fast one on you.
Mhm.
And that's really not how I think the modern community. I don't think that's how the modern community is looking at or feeling it. John,
Yeah.
you brought it up as it's kind of that, hey, what's going to be the learning experience? Or when we
Mhm.
had Jason on a couple of weeks ago as well, there's I think this shift that is occurring, and we're seeing it in some events and some tournament organizers. Obviously, Kicker with Green Banner with Jason running it, so we know his feelings on this. Where judges are really meant to be kind of more, I would say, almost a social lubrication to make the
Yeah.
game run smoothly so that both players are able to execute the game. And it is to some extent it's a competitive game between two players, but also a collaborative game where you are having to play the rule set. and
Yeah.
and that's where I think there's more of a shift in what we are seeing with, again, more modern 40K events, where it's the judge is there to make sure the game is played fairly. Calling a judge is not a bad thing. And in fact, if we have to go through an entire event and the judge is called 17 times, across
We're
different
happy to be
tables,
called.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the part of it where, right, making sure that it can be done right. There's no negativity, to it. Hopefully, all the right. We're verifying the situation so the players can continue their game without it escalating to any kind of negative interaction there between the players, or that, hey, yeah, this is we didn't check a rule, there could be misinterpretations, right? But as long as there's not a malice there and people are accepting to understand how the judge is going to rule it, that's what the perception of a judge should be at these events.
Well said, Nick. And I'm wondering if we need to change the word judge on the back of all of our jerseys for our judges to just social loop or something like that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, we can get creative here. But
I was,
yeah,
I
yeah.
was- if you don't mind, I got one other thing to just
Go
add on
for
to
it.
their kicker. But I was going to say the other thing that could definitely be affecting people's perception of judges within the 40K community is that when a judge makes a mistake, it ends up being much more high profile.
Yeah.
And that and the stories of roll a 4 up and just like what
Oh, that's
everyone
so terrible. Yeah.
The
yeah.
Oh,
worst.
ouch.
And I'm sure that hasn't happened in an event, like a big event in years. And like it's still someone that it's just gets one of those like little stories that just keeps going around and around and around.
It's our
Yeah.
it's our Sasquatch, the thing that
Yeah.
you heard is out there. Whether or not it's kind of a hairy situation, but did it
Yeah.
actually happen? Did someone have
All
evidence?
all right. Question number two, guys. When we talk about judges, judge calls, and let's not beat around the bush, cheaters. Part of the issue, specifically for Warhammer today, is that there's no centralized system of tracking these bad apples. And this is kind of a reoccurring topic. You see it crop up every 6 months or so. Hey, should we be tracking the cheaters? And there's a lot of opinions on it. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Magic and comparing to Magic, but like, does Magic or do we know of any other game systems that have some sort of way of, tracking these players, and how should these rules be enforced, or how should rules be enforced to kind of control or handle a known cheater and maybe his bringing back into the community? Like, what does this look like? Can we learn anything from Magic, I guess, is the question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
John.
I mentioned the DCI earlier, which
Yeah.
unfortunately was disbanded in 2020, and the Judge Academy briefly maintained the program that came after that briefly maintained a list, but has been since Wizards of the Coast has since distanced themselves from the judge programs because they're afraid of some politics around contractors.
Yeah.
But the DCI for almost 30 years maintained a list of all players associated with your number, and if you received warnings at events or you were
Yeah.
accused of cheating, if there are bans issued, to be issued a DCI ban, you go sign up an event, and any store owner could look you up in a database and see you've been banned. For a while, it was a lot more information. You would see you've been banned for cheating, you were banned for being a problematic player, you were
Smelling. Yeah.
kicked out of an event. I don't think anyone ever got kicked out for smelling, but there
Okay,
were
just
signs
checking.
I've definitely seen at some good LGSs saying, please wear some deodorant. So that was something that definitely existed and was very helpful. And it's been interesting to see in the Magic community in particular. And there's a great video by, I think it was Saffron Olive, maybe about a month
Yeah.
ago, who
Yeah.
on recently someone caught cheating in a Pro Tour, shuffling cards from their lap into their hand as needed, and how these really had gone down with time when there was a list that kept track of these things.
Yeah. So
And I will say
do
on
you
the
see that it's actually impacted the Magic community basically negative? Would you say negatively because there's no longer a central tracking system?
there has been some resurgence of people basically claiming everyone on the Pro Tour cheats, which is a generalization that's absolutely
Yeah.
not true. If you go to a Pro Tour event, just for anyone who hasn't watched professional Magic, there are judges that walk around and sit next to every single table, whose only job is basically watch the game to ensure every single game action taken is done correctly and no triggers are missed and nothing has ever been done. Everything is done
Yeah.
exactly the way the rules should be defined.
Cool. Nick, what about you, man? Have you seen other game systems that have some sort of central means of monitoring players?
I mean, Matt, there's not many other game systems that I feel like that are really synonymous with what we're doing, Kicker, and Magic is certainly is the one that most people often draw to, especially because let's be very real, there's a huge pipeline from people going from Magic the Gathering to Warhammer
Yeah.
40K. And I think that's been part of my experiences when, yeah, John's a great
Yeah,
example
I am a
where,
classic example here. You see my Magic cards on the wall,
yeah,
and you see my Imperial
Nice
Knights over
look
here.
at that.
yeah, and there's a lot of Magic players that are very surprised. I feel that when there's not something similar in 40K, and this is where more so my, I guess, plea to the community on this might be, we're gonna get what we support as a system.
Mhm.
So if there's players or there are events that are if there are players that are known cheaters that are being allowed into events by event organizers or continue to be allowed into events and continue to have a bad act, we'll call it. Maybe we as players shouldn't go and play at those
Yeah.
events if those players aren't there, right? That's a part where I hate to put this on the players to say, but hey, if we keep paying for the tournament where the person or a
Yeah.
person keeps cheating, we as the players are we have our own kind of responsibility to that as well.
Yeah.
You're
And then
absolutely right, man.
I'd say the
the
same with supporting your LGS. With if they have
yeah,
poor business practices, you as a player can choose to go to a different
go a
local
different
store
one.
if you have the options
Yeah.
in that case. But
Yeah.
I think
No,
that's fair.
that's really solid, Nick. I got to tell you, I mean, obviously, I work full time for Green Banner, and we do, we've got 7 events of our own, plus we have 8 partner events, and then we support other events, kind of just, on the side. So, very much dialed in, and yeah, internally within our own, let's call it, network, we very closely monitor players. And at one of our events, like if it's a problem, you're not coming to any of our other events, and
Mhm.
we'll warn our partners slash anyone else that's involved, and we also make recommendations on how to handle their coming back into the fold as a player, because that's important. I think you
Yeah.
need to give people an
Yes.
opportunity to change their ways. That's actually that's gonna have to be a podcast, Nick. We got you. Nick's taking notes. Oh, let's do it.
I got some ideas, and I think that's the important. It's
Mhm. It's
the thing
important
I
a lot.
would say. The
Sorry,
thing
go
I
ahead,
would
Nick.
say is that you can't just have a penalty or punishment system without having a path to redemption
Yeah,
that also gets
redemption. That's
covered
it.
from
Yeah.
it, and a way to, hey, you could let people back into events and show that they can be on their best behavior, and maybe, hey, you can come and play, but maybe you're not eligible to win awards, or you're not able.
Yeah.
There's some different ways there, but I think having one of the things that I've seen some events of some communities do is having a zero tolerance policy. But I mean, let's be honest, guys. How many of us have made a mistake playing a game of
Yeah.
40K? And if you make one even honest mistake, is that a DQ? No, and that's not where. And I
Yeah.
say that because there are some that advocate for a zero tolerance policy. That does not help the situation. If anything, that just pushes people away.
I was going to say actually for Magic in particular as a judge, when you're judging at competitive rules level enforcement, you have an infraction guide that you can go to
Yeah,
for all penalties. So you as a judge don't have to figure out someone actually drew an extra card, it's a game rule violation, like what do I do? It is a very clearly laid out set of steps of warning.
Yeah.
I think it's 2 warnings, game loss, and then a match loss. And then at 5, you basically have just already ruined your chances of
event.
winning anyways. Or and it really helps remove the judges from having to make the decision of
Yeah.
do I yellow card, do I red card you, do I talk to the store owner and get you kicked out?
Yeah.
Something like that with even a baseline, I think would also help because we're all going to make mistakes when we
Yeah.
play
Yeah.
40K. It's
This.
it's a something that I think Magic players coming to 40K would really appreciate is the sheer complexity in Magic is displayed on a two-dimensional board
Yeah.
with only 8 to 10 game objects you're realistically interacting with at any given point. I don't have a three-dimensional board where a quarter of an inch matters, and I have to roll 20 dice, and if I actually picked up a 21st, do I then
Yeah,
lose
oh
and
my
get
gosh.
disqualified? Like, how many times has someone actually picked up an extra dice or like forgotten to roll a save? Let me roll my feel no pain really
Yeah.
quick, or oh, it's turns that pass. Let me roll my hazardous test real quick, see if I explode.
This dovetails very nicely into question number 3 here, which it's kind of something we're revisiting from when we had Jason McKenzie, the head Green Banner judge. He was here a few weeks ago. Should events
Great
have?
episode.
Yeah, it was good. Oh, thanks, man.
I
Yeah,
I
it was a
I,
good one.
I enjoyed and took notes on that episode. That
Good,
episode
good.
was so
You
interesting for me.
Oh yeah, if you haven't listened to that episode, folks, go back and listen to it. Quite a few people came back and said that was a really really good one. So that's why we're actually having you, John, is
I
because we're
know. I
looking
was
for
I was like,
another
oh, I
judge.
took Nick a note. I'm like, I kind of like this stuff.
Yeah,
Am I-
yeah. Well, okay, so should events have certified judges? Obviously, we're talking about just now, like, hey, Magic's got it, and Magic also has a way to handle, the penalties, I guess,
Yeah.
infractions. But is this something that, like, as this game is evolving and stuff, like, should be players be expecting, or should tournament holders only have, you know, I guess, established judges there? Just this would increase the overall quality, right, of a game, especially when you're going to a tournament and paying money. Maybe that's the answers, so that you're getting a certain caliber of judge there. Or maybe it's a big no-no. Maybe there's negative experiences you've seen as a Magic certified Magic judge. Tell us, John. What do you think?
So I think there's a lot of second order effects of having an actual established judge program. Not only
Mhm.
do you have a qualified set of judges teaching judges, a big part of the judge program was mentorship. And part of me becoming a judge, I had to talk to a judge that we above the level I was going to, and like almost have an interview about why I wanted to do it. Like I'm
Yeah,
not doing it for the money. I was doing it because the store that I judge at, Atomic Empire, is fantastic.
yeah,
It's got the best Magic community in this area, hands down. I love all of my players there. But not only do you have access to accreditation for judges, the Judge Academy and the DCI had all sorts of extra resources for judges. So you'd often get a write-up of all the rules coming out from mechanics, coming from judges, explaining interactions. They had conferences for you to go
cool.
to and attend where you could learn. There was a judge Discord. I could go into. I had a competitive event where I got a question about layers, and layers is the way in which magic applies different effects. So if you're like increasing power and toughness and then changing its color and then changing its creature type, these all happen in a set series of orders. And if you're a Magic player and you hear the word layers and problems, you're just gonna. It's an incredibly complicated nest of rules, and we had something come up in an event where someone could win an invite to a regional qualifier for the Pro Tour. Something you don't really want to take a chance on. I think I understand how this works.
Yeah.
You could just ask this judge Discord, and they'll send you a link to the rules. They'll explain what happened, so that way we can get this call correct. You get a
Cool.
lot of those extra effects once you start having accreditation, and the people who are the sort of the leads of those programs sometimes end up getting consulted so that rules that come in the future actually work the way they're supposed to.
Yeah.
So you kind of get all these extra effects of doing accreditation programs. But it's important that that program is not just tied in this case to like Games Workshop. Having some amount of independence for them to operate where there's not
Yeah.
a split responsibility to the company. Their judges really need to be to the game and to the people.
You're
The
right. It has
players.
to be neutral party. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but you're absolutely right. It does need to be a neutral party. Nick, what do you think?
I'm gonna try to give a different answer than what I shared when we had Jason on a few weeks ago too,
Okay, all right.
and because my thoughts haven't changed that much in a sense. I'm always open to the new ideas on this. And John, based on your feedback and parts here, I really love that the part here where we need to grow our judging community.
Mhm.
We have certainly no shortage of quantity of 40K events.
Yes.
We're at the point where to me it becomes that we've got the quantity, that's fine. What we need to do is raise the quality, and we have generally good terrain at most of these events. What do we need to do to really be able to elevate it and have more positive spin for the community and make it more attractive to more people? We need to improve the quality of the judging. I think that's
Yeah.
where, hey, is it a judge
There's a
certification?
deficit, man. There's a deficit. You're getting
Yeah.
more events, and so you're getting these TOs or judges just finding anyone and everyone to be a judge, and that's cool because an event fires off. But that's potentially for disaster, right? Making your
It
event
is.
flop on its face,
Yeah.
or provide the inappropriate winner up top. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That is a problem that we are facing.
Yeah. And
And
I'll
it's
add
something that
kicker.
Yeah.
I'll add real quick because we had a comment about this on our prior episode where someone was like, well, hey, this is great, but how are we going to support a judging community, or how are we going to support, like, this is going to take time and this is going to take money? Yes, and we should start on work at that. From the time aspect, we should start on that now. From a money aspect, from it, 40K and going to tournaments and things like that, it's an expensive hobby for sure,
Mhm.
right? None of us can deny that part of it. But
Yeah.
it's the sort of thing where, for me as a community player, am I going to pay? Would I be willing to pay $5 or $10 more, per event, to have something as there as
Oh,
a
cool.
judge that was going to be doing, more? I know a lot of events have done that, or a lot of local stores where, hey, when they're upgrading their terrain, do they ask players to, hey, pay more because after X
Yeah.
amount of events, we'll be able to put that back into getting new standardized, format terrain. I think those are all reasonable takes to be able to address this, but it's the sort of thing where we can continue to complain about the judging, and it's not going to get any better, or we can make notable changes in the community to improve the quality of the judging. And I'd
And,
rather go that path.
and Jason, man, there's a lot of cool things in the works for us that have already actually been implemented in very private circles. So just stick around, give us a few more, give us another month or so. But John, that I mean, out of curiosity, because this is kind of, do you have to like renew your Magic certification as a judge? Was that
So
an annual thing or something?
there was under the DCI and under the Judge Academy that came afterwards
Yeah,
a sort of continuing education policy of where
yeah.
you needed to go to a certain number of conferences and attend a certain number of that. Since the Judge Academy program has been disbanded, I no longer do that.
Okay.
The new Judge Foundry is still kind of figuring out what's going on there and figuring out the relationship.
But during its height, its peak, there was a renewal process or re-education kind of thing.
Yeah, and like it was you were constantly exposed to it through every time you judged. I'm gonna pick on the pre-release as a great example. Every time you judged a pre-release, it's like 200 to 300 new cards. You need to at least have an idea of what they do. You need to understand the mechanics and how they interact, and you kind of were always getting more education through that,
Yeah.
through some of the content that came out of the judge community. I have a lot of friends. I've got a Discord with a bunch of judges, and so whenever we're talking Magic or rules interactions or stuff like that, there's a lot of really cool and fun,
Yeah.
uh, weird bits of the system that is Magic that creates this fascinating puzzle to play with sometimes.
Cool, cool. All right, guys, time for wild card. We got to keep it short and to the point. This is an important thing, John. We do wild cards every episode.
Oh yeah.
Wild cards. This one's actually not as wild. It's still kind of related, but paper or plastic? Do you prefer the miniature community over the competitive card game community? We know we all like 40K, but is there anything from the card game culture that maybe we wish we had in 40K? Maybe the sort of social norm. John, take it away.
I would say if you had to pick between the competitive 40K and the competitive Magic community, I would pick the competitive Magic community or competitive 40K community personally. But if you're talking about just between the two communities,
Yeah.
there's an amazing social contract that it can exist at a pre-release and Commander nights,
Yeah.
and I really enjoy that. But I will say I have to shout out to the guys on X4 who have made
Team. Yeah.
the 40K friends I've made in the last couple of years just this awesome group of guys that I talk to probably almost more than anyone else at this
Ah.
point. If I had to
Uh,
pick between the two competitive communities, I am going to go for the competitive 40K community because the social contract sitting down to play at every single event that I have had has resulted in amazing interaction I've never had in competitive Magic.
okay.
Competitive Magic is very much a game of hidden information, known information,
Yeah.
and you only interact as much as you have to. There's no
Let's be
obligation to
straight up.
talk to
How
your
many
opponent.
friends, like close friends that you talk to on a daily basis are competitive Magic players versus your competitive pre-K? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that is a pretty fair point though.
pretty good
Shout out to
indicator.
Frank alone for how much
Yeah.
I just talk to him on a daily
Frank's the
basis.
captain of X4, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Sweet. Sweet.
just an awesome guy all around with I will say one of the best beards in 40K.
Oh, all right. Nick, what do you think, man? Paper or
I
plastic?
I first of all, I love the phrasing for this question, Kicker. That's the best part of it to me. But I look at it this way because I got into a lot of the nerd games through card-based games, Magic the Gathering, or other trading card or collectible card games, that sort of thing. Actually, right now, sitting on the desk next to me, I've got Lord of the Rings trading card game from the early 2000s when I've been going through my old collection because I've got thousands of cards,
Yep.
which I'm organizing into sets. But I loved playing that game. The difference for me is that growing up as a kid, and I never got into like competitive Magic or some of the other card games, but getting together with friends, there were so many different formats you could play in just that single kind of card game, but you could go through a bunch of them in a night. And it was kind of rapid fire, get that quick, serotonin burst.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
Warhammer, though, it's a more kind of drawn out item. But I mean, how many times do people, I know Kicker, I know there's events, and I think I already heard rumblings at Challengers Cup that people may be bringing Magic decks to play at like
It's gonna be
Friday
more.
night, right?
Yeah.
So like you can go and play Warhammer, and then hey, when you're done for the day, like your socialization with your friends can be sitting down and playing a quick couple games of Magic or Commander format, that sort
Yeah.
of thing. Whereas that's not really the mindset from the Magic community and some other parts. So to me, I like Warhammer. That's where my head is at.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of us are here in this Warhammer community. We wouldn't be here in this Warhammer community if it weren't for Magic as our gateway drug to it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
drug is a good way to describe Magic the Gathering sometimes.
I have got zero experience with card games. I've only ever wanted to play miniature games, so I can't even compare the two. The one thing that I gotta say that I'm slightly jealous of from Magic is that because Magic, unlike Warhammer, is very open to other IPs. They license out. I think there's a Lord of the Ring deck, right? I would love to
Yep.
bring over. Yeah, I just
I've
want
got
like
I've got one of those
you got one,
right up
right?
there on
Right?
my
Right.
shelf. Yeah, yeah.
I just want like I don't know, like a Yoda to like be in my Imperial Guard army or something, right? Like I would like a little crossover. That's never going to happen. But there are some other properties that I absolutely love that would be kind of fun to bring in miniature format or at least to 40K format.
Yeah,
All
so
right,
Kicker, what you're
yeah,
talking about there is called the Universes Beyond, and so they
yeah,
started it actually. I might have been a 40K might have been one of the first Universes
yeah.
Beyond
I think so.
products they released.
Mhm.
Because they did a set of 4 40K commander decks. It was the Imperium of Man, Tyranids,
Oh, wow.
Necrons, and
Chaos.
Chaos.
Yeah, cool.
And
I
that
might
was
I might have all four of those
And they were
sitting on my shelf.
I do have all 4 of those, and I'll tell
ah,
you the Abaddon deck is a deck I don't understand why I like it so much, but every time I play it, I have tons of fun, and as
oh,
soon
that's
as I
good.
modify it, I make it worse, and
Ah,
I don't know how I do that. But
sweet.
they're adding a lot of new universes IP. So the Lord of the Rings set was the biggest one that
But
came out. I think it might have
how
been a
cool
year
is
and a
that
half
though,
ago.
right? That Magic is able to do that, and we can't. 40K is 40K is 40K. The Grim Dark is only, on my Games Workshop, and I just
Yeah.
I kind of would I don't know. That's the one little thing I'm kind of like ah. All right, this is tagging along with this first
Mhm.
question here because it kind of works with we addressed it a little bit, but I want to
Mhm.
get more of a definite answer here. Is 40K is it a one-way street? I see Magic players becoming 40K players all the time, but is there other 40K players going back to Magic? And we do know that there's guys that play both, but I generally see a lot of people going from Magic to 40K. Do you see it the other way around,
I've
John?
seen a lot of people play both. I
Yeah.
think, and I think it's Magic is getting an influx of players from all over the place,
Mhm.
but they're often playing Commander or
Yeah.
they're doing pre-release or like they'll do draft nights. Draft is where you get a box, you take 3 packs, and you're taking one card out and passing the rest. And so you build your deck by passing these
Cool.
booster packs around. It's called limited. It's one of the best features of Magic in some ways. But you see, I've seen people flow into Magic from the 40k Commander decks. We did a whole night at our store about that. They did a Fallout set,
So
and I had a friend that
it's
got
not
into
as
that.
one way though, because I thought it was only one way. But you're saying that we do get 40k players going towards Magic.
Yeah, I've seen some. There's a couple of the guys that I play with that are not part of X4 that have dipped their toes into Magic, and they're kind of getting in. But when you already play 40k, it kind of is hard to have both hobbies.
Yeah.
I will say we have a Final Fantasy set coming out in a couple of weeks, and oh yeah,
You doing
and I
it?
know that the predictions on that is we're going to get a lot of influx of Magic players from that. But I don't know if you get as much from just 40k because it already has its own game and system set up that you can interact in a different way. Whereas Fallout, typically I associate with the games. Lord of the Rings has a miniature game, but more people know it from the movies.
What do you think, Nick? What do you think? Do you know any 40k players that have decided to sell their miniatures and just pick up cards?
They've gone some that have gone back into Magic the Gathering. I think, like I said, it's the gateway for a lot of people. But more often than not, if people are leaving Warhammer or leaving 40k behind in particular, it's usually going to a different game system. I think one of the
Miniature game system, yeah.
yeah, a different miniature game system. I mean, something like Star Wars, Legion or Shatterpoint. MCP is supposed to
Yeah,
be,
MCP's hot right
really
now.
good, and a
Hell,
lot of
even
it is.
Old World. I'm seeing a lot of 40k players
Oh
dropping
yeah,
sci-fi for fantasy.
I
yeah.
mean, have you seen the new models that came out for
Cathay,
Grand
whatever.
Cathay.
Oh
Oh,
my!
jeez, yeah,
I
right.
don't have
Look at
room
this.
for it,
We're all
but
talking about it. Yeah.
do I want to start a Grand Cathay army? Yes, I do. But yeah, I think it's usually going to a different game system. It is different, right? Like playing a card based game, you have certain mechanics that are set. Whereas a dice-based game, it's like, hey, yeah, you have the dice rolling, that RNG type of element that
Yeah.
goes to it, but it is still a strategy-based games. You have to deal with the physical. John, you mentioned the 3D aspect of it.
Yeah, the 3D aspects. And
So
I think
it
the
is
social
very different.
contract there is also what really keeps people in one way or the others is
Yeah.
you have to actually interact with your opponent in a game of 40k to have a conversation. It's going to be a very long 3 hours.
You're
Yeah.
playing a game together, right? You're finding
Yeah.
a conclusion together. Yeah.
I played a game at like an RCQ where it was like land, go, and that's about the much my actions and no interaction outside
wow.
of that. And it's just not the same.
No.
Yeah.
No. Well, hey, Nick, why don't you take us out? Maybe tell people where they can find John if he's got a presence online and if he wants to interact with our audience.
Yeah. So, John, on behalf of us, thank you for accepting the Epic Challenge, and I was really excited based
Anytime.
on your interest in our judging episode earlier. And this was hey, just knowing some of your background as well. Hey, this is a great way to actually let's compare and contrast, see what we can learn from each other as it goes to making this community better. But John, can you remind us again? You're part of the X4 team down in North Carolina. Anything you
Yep.
want to add or shout outs to the team while you're here?
I want to just shout out to that whole group for just being an awesome group of guys to hang out with. Shepherd me from my little intro into 40k with my first Space Marine to where I am now. We have an X4 Instagram that just got put up a couple days ago, so you can find some pictures of Frank and maybe even you up there, Nick.
I think so. Yeah.
And then shout out, I also to my local game store if you're ever in the area, Atomic Empire. They're awesome, wonderfully welcoming, great store. They even have a beer on tap in there, so you want to stop and have a drink, play some 40k. Feel free to hit me up.
Excellent, John. Thank you. Kicker. Next week. Do we have a plan for next week yet?
I don't want to.
It's still being worked on,
beans.
right?
I don't want to spill the beans because this one's really cool. But I'm working on a guest who can give us an inside peek into the secret world that is Games Workshop. So I don't. Let me confirm things, but this will be a lot of fun to kind of see behind the curtain a little bit about how things happen there. So yeah, Nick, take us out, buddy.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, thank you. We hope you really enjoyed this episode of Epic Challenge. Enjoy your 40K, and we'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for listening to Epic Challenge. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And be sure to check out Green Banner Event Co., the ones who help make this show possible. Tune in next week for another Epic Challenge.